Imagine it is a fog-cooled evening in Northern California, late October 1972. You finish an art history lecture at Santa Rosa Junior College, step outside, and feel that mixture of independence and impatience that defines campus life. The buses run on a whenever they feel like it timetable. Your roommate forgot the car again, and you have exactly 66 cents in your pocket. So you do what thousands of students do without hesitation. You walk to the on-ramp, stick out your thumb, and wait for the next Volkswagen bus or battered pickup to slow down. In 1972, that gesture is as common as waving for a taxi. You trade stories, maybe sneak a Marlboro, then hop out a few miles closer to home. You are certain, absolutely certain, you will arrive. Now rewind that scene 7 times, each with a different woman, each on a familiar Sonoma County road, each expecting the ride to be routine. Somewhere along those routes, the rides end, the conversations stop, and the women simply vanish. No one hears a horn, no one files a police report, until worry curdles into fear, and no body is found for months, if at all. The newspapers will eventually group their names under one grim headline: the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders. You might know the Zodiac-dominated Bay Area front pages back then. Yet while his ciphers and taunting notes grabbed the spotlight, somebody else hunted quietly. To this day, we do not know if that somebody was one person, 2 people, or an unlucky overlap of predators. What we do know comes from timelines, forensic echoes, and the stubborn memories of a community that refuses to forget. So, who were these 7 women whose ordinary choices became a collective cautionary tale? Picture 18-year-old Maureen Sterling and 17-year-old Yvonne Weber. Best friends. They leave an ice skating rink on February 4th, 1972, giddy from music and frozen fingers. They plan to hitch south toward Bennett Valley Road, a stretch lit mostly by moonlight. When they fail to show up for school the next morning, parents assume typical teenage rebellion. Missing person reports languish. It will take 10 months for a pair of deer hunters to stumble upon their remains off Franz Valley Road. The girls' necklaces lie tangled beside them, eerily intact. Fast forward to late November. 23-year-old Kim Allen studies anthropology at Sonoma State. You would like her. Quick wit, habit of reciting Beatles lyrics instead of answering yes or no. She visits a friend in Larkspur, leaves at 10:15 p.m., and is last seen climbing into a pale sedan near the Highway 111 ramp. 37 days later, a volunteer search team finds her body in a ravine 16 miles away. The coroner notes ligature marks on wrists and ankles. The pattern will repeat. 2 months pass. February 17th, 1973. 13-year-old Carolyn Davis, small for her age, thumbs a ride from a Petaluma church after arguing with her stepfather about homework. She disappears in daylight. Her skeletal remains surface nearly a year later beside Porter Creek Road. The county sheriff tries to link her to a runaway report, but the ligature marks tell a harsher story. 3 more names join the list before summer ends. 16-year-old Teresa Walsh, 20-year-old Dolores D., Lorna Erhard, 15-year-old Jeanette Kamahele. Each girl vanishes within a 25-mile radius. Each believed hitchhiking is as ordinary as borrowing a library book. Each is found, or never found, in rugged hills bordering wine country. And each time, the sheriff's department faces the same cruel math. No eyewitness, no confession, no matching fingerprints. At this point, you might wonder, how in a region buzzing with reporters tracking the Zodiac, did 7 disappearances earn so little ink? Part of the answer lies in timing. The Zodiac's letters dripped menace directly onto editors' desks. He named newspapers, threatened school buses, crafted puzzles that begged to be printed. The Santa Rosa killer, or killers, wrote nothing. Silence does not sell copy. Another factor is social attitude. In the early 70s, hitchhiking carried an implicit risk label. Law enforcement, mostly older men, often shrugged. Girls got in strangers' cars. What did they expect? Public sympathy existed, yet resources gravitated toward crimes perceived as solvable or sensational. The Zodiac had cryptograms. Santa Rosa just had grief. But patterns whisper, even if you refuse to hear them. Investigators mapped rideshare habits, tracked where bodies surfaced, measured intervals between abductions. Distances radiated outward like spider legs from Santa Rosa city center. Dump sites usually sat one car's width off rural lanes, shielded by redwoods. Victims wore different fashions, carried different dreams, yet autopsies noted common injuries: rope or cord pressure on wrists, shallow chest bruises, absence of sexual assault in several cases. That combination suggested a perpetrator motivated by control more than carnal violence. Speculation circled local men with outdoor skills, maybe a ranch hand, maybe someone tied to the nearby Air Force Base. Tips poured in, investigatory notebooks filled, but the forensic toolbox of 1973 was blunt. DNA profiling lurked decades away. Fiber analysis required pristine conditions that decomposed hillsides rarely preserved. Think about the technology gap. Today, if you post a selfie from the roadside, cell towers triangulate your coordinates within seconds. In 73, the best tracker was a payphone call that might never come. Patrol cars lacked mobile data terminals. Crime scene tape flapped in the wind, while deputies scribbled license plate numbers on paper that later got soaked by rain. Evidence management resembled a high-stakes scavenger hunt. Still, fragments survived. A scrap of rayon caught on bark, a partial fingerprint smudged on a beer bottle, microscopic pollen in shoelaces. At the time, those clues sat in envelopes marked "Hold for future testing." Future finally arrived. Jump ahead to the present afternoon. You sit in an air-conditioned lab at the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, staring at a desktop DNA sequencer no bigger than a shoebox. Inside, samples once considered hopeless, mined bone shavings from the Sterling Weber case, a hair root from the Kim Allen scene, are being read base pair by base pair. Genealogical databases, with permission protocols in place, let analysts compare crime scene DNA to public family trees. The technique already broke the Golden State Killer case. Could it do the same here? Possibly, says cold case detective John Clare. He explains how YSTR profiles might isolate a surname, how mitochondrial signatures can track maternal lines across continents, how one distant cousin uploading an ancestry kit could shatter 50 years of silence. He sounds cautious, yet charged, like someone holding a match near dry tinder. Yet science alone cannot resurrect context. That is where you come in. Every retelling, every podcast episode, every campus seminar keeps pressure on agencies to allocate lab hours and grants. When you recount Maureen and Yvonne laughing outside the skating rink, you remind listeners that these are not archival footnotes. They were teenagers who memorized locker combinations and crushed on guitar players. When you describe Kim Allen quoting the Beatles, you give her more than a case number. And when you contrast the Zodiac spotlight with the hitchhiker shadows, you raise the question that still unsettles local historians. Why do some stories dominate headlines while others fight to be remembered at all? Look closely at those contrasts. The Zodiac taunted big city journalists. Santa Rosa's predator targeted rural routes. The Zodiac favored cryptic theatrics. Santa Rosa displayed methodical disposal. One killer wrote letters, the other left rope burns. Could they be the same? The FBI compared handwriting, boot impressions, and geography, and concluded, probably not. Zodiac killings tapered off after 1974, but hitchhiker cases straddled multiple years with gaps. Serial offenders can change patterns, yet most profilers argue two separate hunters exploited the same cultural habit: easy thumb travel. That cultural habit deserves its own spotlight. Hitchhiking in the 70s was not fringe. It was mainstream. Gas shortages had not yet spiked. Cars were roomy, and freeway patrols minimal. College brochures even suggested ride-sharing as a cost-saving tip. The counterculture preached trust, and roadside billboards depicted smiling travelers. When danger stories circulated, they often painted victims as reckless rather than the drivers as predatory. You might ask, would these women have felt safer if campuses provided evening shuttles, or if the county expanded bus lines? Probably. Infrastructure can be an unsung hero. The tragedy is that social change often arrives one headline late. Where does the investigation stand right now, as you listen? Evidence from all 7 cases has been digitized and recatalogued. Every cord fragment, every button, every photograph of tire tracks is scanned at high resolution. Deputies re-interview surviving witnesses with body-worn cameras that timestamp every syllable. Machine learning sifts old tip-line transcripts for recurring nouns that human ears missed. A budget grant approved last spring funds 3 more rounds of forensic genealogy analysis. The lab team hopes fresh DNA profiles by winter. If a hit surfaces, detectives will still need corroboration. Alibis shattered, confessions recorded, maybe a forgotten souvenir linking suspect to victim. Technology offers arrows. Humans must still aim. Meanwhile, roadside memorials bloom each anniversary. Plastic daisies for Yvonne, guitar picks for Kim, handwritten poems for Carolyn. People slow their cars, roll down windows, and whisper, "Be safe" to invisible travelers. You might drive past those markers someday, and the story may feel distant, but if you ever extend your thumb, or more likely, request a rideshare app, you inherit a slimmer slice of that vintage risk. Progress builds quietly on heartbreak. So what can you personally do beyond listening? Share credible updates, not rumors. Donate to victim family scholarship funds. Advocate for cold case units when local budgets tighten. Remember that results rarely unfold at movie speed. They arrive through months of lab work and years of persistence. And keep asking the uncomfortable question: who stole 7 futures along those Sonoma County roads? And why has the answer hidden for half a century? Maybe the final breakthrough will come from a miracle relative match. Maybe it will emerge from a forgotten diary entry in a storage locker. Or maybe, just maybe, a conscience grown old will decide to speak. Until that moment, the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders remain an unfinished sentence in California's true crime ledger, but one you can help complete by staying curious, staying vocal, and refusing to let silence win. Take that with you. Next time you buckle into a friend's car, glance at the passenger seat and appreciate the ordinary miracle of arriving. The vanished hitchhikers never got that closure, but your awareness honors them every mile you travel safely. Keep the story alive, and maybe, when the DNA sequencer hums to life tomorrow morning, it will hum their names one step closer to justice.